Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk.
Whatever the challenge that you face, you'll need effective insurance solutions. Look no further than IGS Insurance Brokers. We specialize in commercial, auto insurance, life, individual and group health, as well as pension packages.
Our aim at IGS is to offer the best possible service to our clients and at the same time to be a credit to the insurance industry in Barbados.
Call us at 242-7642. IGS Insurance Brokers. You can stay safe with us.
Well, today our special guest right up front is the former West Indies cricketer, Tony Gray. You may have noticed a bit of a hesitation when I said cricketer because sometimes I'm not really sure how to define him. If I say cricketer, he makes a noise and says that he should have mentioned that he can bat as well. We know him as a fast bowler. So, Tony, maybe I'll just let you introduce yourself. Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk.
Former West Indies all around that.
Well, you see, we have a thing about accuracy here on the show as well. Huh? So that's why we tend to choose our words very carefully. But I don't think there are too many people who listen to you nowadays who will doubt that you certainly become an excellent analyst. And I know that you are already involved in coaching. So in that sense, you're definitely an all-rounder.
Thank you very much.
All right. We've also got Wayne Holden, my co-host. And I know Wayne would have been a big fan during your playing days. So I know that Wayne is thrilled to be part of this discussion. Wayne?
Well, good evening. It is a pleasure to welcome Tony Gray to the show. This is my first time on with him. I would have seen Tony Gray on a number of occasions, both representing Trinidad and the West Indies over my years of following the game. You talk about the veracity of how we try to keep it to the show. I'm not so sure that I was a big fan of Tony Gray. After all, he played against Barbados, and I was not a fan of him when he played against Barbados. I can tell you that straight out front. He was a good fast bowler, and that is why I was not a fan of him. If he was an ordinary fast bowler that the Barbadian cricket batsman could do as they like with him, I would be his biggest fan.
So I should have said then that you have great respect for him.
But I have respect. No, but I was a fan when he played for West Indies.
Okay, fair enough.
I was hoping that he did above his abilities when playing for West Indies, but I wish that the Barbadian batsman had put a lot more licks in him.
Yeah, but talking about playing for the West Indies, though, if I remember correctly, and Tony could correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember one of you had I think it was a 6-wicket performance, and you didn't play much after that. What happened?
Yeah, 6 for 50 against Australia, which at the time was the second best in the world. It was at my home ground, Queen's Park Cricket Club. Mm-hmm. I was very happy with that performance because it was in front of my home ground, obviously, and represented the people of the region. 2 games after I was dropped, and no explanation given. But that's life. Life has to continue.
So a lot of things haven't changed since the time you played between then and now. Not a lot has changed as far as explanations and selections are concerned.
Man, you pulled the words straight out of my mouth. I mean, was it that obvious? Did you read it? Was that obvious?
I think that was the next obvious statement anyway.
I guess they say the more things change, the more they remain the same. And here we are, so many decades later, and still, some would say kerfuffled, if you want to use that word, by some of the goings-ons in West Indies cricket. And the talking point recently has been the naming of the players for the new contract period. Not so much those names, because I haven't heard, quite frankly, any significant criticism, if any at all, about the new players named. But there's been plenty of discussion about those contracts that have not been renewed, so to speak, and also a situation where there has been a reduction in the overall contracts, which was somewhat surprising, especially when we learned during the press conference that the contracts offered to the Silver, the Keeper, the Warner and Mears were actually developmental contracts. So there has been a lot of confusion, I would suggest, because if you had 22 contracts and you've come down now to 18, and 3 of those are developmental, then that asks a certain amount of questions. But Tony, what is your general impression about this whole contract issue? What's your response to it?
Well, good evening to everybody. I think that generally the selectors have done a good enough job, but with some question marks behind it. I like the fact that they are following the criteria for selection and the criteria for given contracts. There's some flexibility, and the selectors need to be flexible, not just based on the criteria, but based on what is happening internationally, what is pertinently happening internationally. Like, for example, the Hayden Walls Jr. situation. They're saying that they need a wrist spinner in white ball cricket, which is true because wrist spinners have done marvelously well for the respective countries in one-day cricket and T20 cricket. And the Hayden Walls Jr. is somebody you can invest in. There's some question marks about why not give young fast bowlers a contract, because we are looking to reorganize West Indies cricket and resurge West Indies cricket. And to me, giving young fast bowlers a contract will, boost their motivation, and we need to get them back on track. We have aging fast bowlers in Shannon Gabriel and Kemar Roach, and they would not play for perhaps 2 or 3 years again. So we definitely need to encourage our young fast bowlers. The issue with Ruston Chase will come to mind, but generally the selectors have stuck to the criteria that has been laid down by the CWI, where giving players contracts.
I'm wondering though, Tony, they say there's a certain statement normally made about when you do something over and over and it doesn't work, you keep doing it. It speaks to certain things. And we have been in this cycle of, I would say, punitive methods for quite a long time. And by that I mean, a person doesn't perform and you punish them by dropping them, you punish them by taking away a contract. We've been doing that now for about 20 years. We probably did it before, then things were better. But it's not worked within the last 20 years. We just have a revolving situation. We are rotating players with the bat averaging all between 30 and 35. And with the ball, not a whole lot of difference either. When will we reach the stage, do you think, or do you think we need to look towards a stage where we reduce that punitive approach and adopt a more developmental approach, where we move forward trying to develop a group of players to take West Indies cricket forward?
That's an excellent question. It's an excellent question because, again, it's a pertinent question. If you look back at the past, and we have to again do our research, in the 70s and the 80s, West Indies cricket was the best in the world because we had a very good, strong, competitive cricketing system here in the Caribbean. It's not that way again. So players take longer to make the transition from regional cricket to international cricket. And we must be pertinent where that is concerned and give them a longer time to progress and perform. They're not going to make the transition very easy. So I think a 2.5 or 3 year period is more feasible. Of course, there are going to be certain things that come into play, the attitude of players, for example. But when you look at players failing, like Ruston Chase, for example, in this COVID situation, selectors must understand why. And we have 2 selectors, one, the lead selector in Roger Harper, and the other one, Philip Simmons, the head coach of the regional team. We've gone through the psychology education that is needed, and they must understand why players are failing. For example, Ruston Chase, as I mentioned, this bubble situation is a novelty situation. And to me, he has suffered most because I looked at him in England. He looked drawn, he looked tired. He got run out by not even trying. And to me, I think that you have to factor in these situations because they're novelty situations. So I think that players should be looked at in a holistic sense. And why are they failing? That's a question that selectors have to ask, because we don't want players getting into contracts and getting out of contracts too quickly. It really doesn't help the West Indies team.
Well, gentlemen, in the interest of balance, if I may call it that, the whole idea, the concept of offering contracts to West Indies players is relatively new. It's a relatively new concept. Tony, you yourself would not have benefited in any way, and it was never even mooted. It was never even mentioned in the days when you played, which are around the same time that the West Indies were so dominant. So maybe there's something there. But it is a relatively new phenomenon. We have a situation where over 100 cricketers in the West Indies are paid professionals, something that has been introduced within the last, let's say, decade or so. And then we go on to these retainer contracts at the international level. We must also note that a person losing a retainer contract at the international level is not out of pocket, is not out of a contract per se. These fellas still remain employed, they still remain professionals. So we must bear that in mind. Antoine, I would ask you, if that is a satisfactory development for you. Are you satisfied that it is a situation where the players of today are better off, for instance, than the players of your day?
Yeah, they're better off financially. Regional cricket in my day, you didn't get a lot of money at all, perhaps a little stipend, and you had to work very hard to be on the West Indies team, and that was the motivation. These players now are paid properly, and they can earn a living, not just from regional cricket, but there's motivation to go forward financially. But it doesn't help West Indies cricket if the players themselves in an environment in their hometowns not working hard enough and not being specific to the cause of developing themselves further so that they could really and truly represent the people of the region. So again, it's not just about giving contracts, but having the environment that will increase that professionalism and that hard work, so you can see it panned out internationally. So it has to work hand in hand. But I agree with players getting a salary. You want them fixated on the proper development and wanting to play for the West Indies team, but you want them to work hard, and some players don't work hard.
And while that may very well be true, Tony, if and forgive me for my references to school, because that I have had a lot of experience in that area, so sometimes I fall into that. But if I've got a class of students who, let's say, out of 100, are consistently getting around 40 or 50, the majority of them, okay, maybe one guy may get 60 or 70, but they pretty much average 40 or 50. Then clearly there has to be an issue other than an issue outside, that is outside their fault, so to speak. There's got to be something, some reason. Either it is that the work that is being offered is beyond their ability. It is maybe possibly that the teaching is not up to scratch. The environment, something has to be wrong other than those students, because they all have the same problem. We are rotating every year a bundle of players around the same average. And the standard, they said, is 30. Now, we weren't given a standard at the press conference for the bowlers, at least I didn't pick up one. But the standard for the batsmen seems to be 30. And how many players right now in West Indies cricket, I'm not talking about Bonner and Mears who played a handful of games, how many players who played 10 matches in West Indies cricket have an average of 35? So there has to be a bigger problem, and to my mind, a problem that playing musical chairs with contracts is not going to solve. I think we need to get past the punitive concept where we drop a guy, we take away a contract. You got to work hard, but work hard doing what? You can work hard and work hard doing the wrong thing. So when are we going to recognize that something more needs to be done so that we get out of this punitive mindset And when we change our team, it is primarily for strategic reasons. So therefore, you've got your leg spinner who may be your first choice in the bowling attack. But then you come up against a team that may have a lot of left-handers, and your research shows you that these left-handers struggle against all spinners. So your leg spinner, who may not be doing a bad job, but you've got an off spinner in your camp as well, and he comes into the team for the leg spinner. That's a strategic change to strengthen the team for that particular contest. That's the type of change that I think we need to be looking at. This dropping and changing contracts, to my mind, is a lot of rubbish that's going to get us nowhere.
Well, I think that in addition to that, because it's a fair enough statement, a valid statement that you just made, we have to look at the individuals and what can better them, but we have to look at the systemic changes too. I mean, I keep on saying that if we look back, we'll find that we had some systems in place. There are different systems, you know. I call it facility systems. We had pitches that assisted our batsmen to be proper batsmen against pace, for example, because they were forced to do that. We had pitches in Trinidad, for example, that turned a little bit, that assisted our spin bowlers. That's why you got spin bowlers coming from Trinidad. But I think that coaches must individualize things, and there needs to be a concerted, collective effort among people like the coaches, the selectors, the board, the physiotherapists. Shannon Gabriel's situation, for example, there needed to be a little bit more conversation about his fitness level before the test match started against Sri Lanka, the first test. So I think that we have to individualize things as coaches to analyze why players individually are not getting the type of production we need, looking at their abilities. I mean, you have a lot of young fast bowlers here, but they seem to be going down the ladder where performance levels are concerned. Shamahola, what has happened to him? Young Harden, Anderson Phillips has played one day game recently. Ocean Thomas, he bowled some deliveries at 97 miles an hour. So again, we have to do the analytical work and understand why players are failing so that we don't get them off the scene, because we're going to lose a lot of talent that we've worked so hard to develop.
And I don't think I necessarily have the answer. I don't think any one person may necessarily have the answer. What I think you're promoting, and what I would like to see as well, is some sort of strategy to try to determine what the problem is. But right now, the assumption is that we have players who are disciplined, and that's basically the problem. But if you have a situation where a significant number of your players, what did I even say majority? I say a significant number, and a significant number for me at that level, it has to be even 3 or 4. You've got a significant number of players who are not passing fitness tests, and things of that nature. To me, it again, based on I suppose my education background, I'm drawing on that again. It suggests that it has to be more than the student. It has to be more than the cricketer. What it is that is demotivated these players, and I say demotivating because we have no evidence to suggest that they had these problems before. I mean, before they came to the attention of West Indies, because they would have done enough, not so, at the first class level to attract the attention of the selectors. So they had to be doing something right. And now all of a sudden, fitness tests are a problem. Everything is a problem. To my mind, it cannot just be the player.
Well, I mean, let's look at Hetmeyer, for example. He has, 2 infractions of not passing a minimum fitness test, which is 40 in a yo-yo test, which at his age, he's 24 years old. He's supposed to be able to meet those minimum standards. And I think that the CWI is right, along with the selectors, of not playing him because he's not been able to reach those standards. But my question to you and Wayne there is that if Hetmeyer didn't have the CPL, or if he wasn't traveling across the world playing franchise T20 cricket, would he not pass the minimum fitness test to acquire the finances that international cricket has to offer? Because to me, there are complacent players circulating around. They get quick money, and that's great for them. But the goal setting of players are not really there. In my era, Sir Andy Roberts, Michael Holden, you had Joel Garner, you had Sir Vivian Richards, all wanted to achieve great things. So internally, the general psyche is to acquire quickly and perhaps get complacent. You look at Cottrell, for example, he was absolutely brilliant in the World Cup. To me, he looked fitter. He was improving, and not just in his bowling department, where he got some very early wickets, but he was brilliant in the field, some brilliant catches and that sort of thing. He just got a contract last year in the IPL, and where is he now? He's not been offered a contract by the West Indies Cricket Board or CWI. So it seems to me there's a level of complacency is really there, and we have to find ways of disintegrating that level of complacency in our players.
Is that not partially the job of the coach and others around the backroom staff? Isn't that what they pay the big bucks for?
Yeah,
certainly not to teach a guy how to bowl off breaks and leg breaks or how to play for defense. So it's got to be more to it than that. I mean, I accept what you're saying as the problem. I recognize that could very well be a problem. But then the question is, will playing musical chairs with contracts solve that problem?
No, but we have to understand that there must be academies to put these guys in. I mean, it's not easy for them to play for the West Indies team and then go into regional cricket where some environments are not conducive to progressing their talents forward. You know, but in addition to that, I think that you have to have self-motivation. Everything is in place, or a lot of things are in place now for players to go forward. But it's up to them. Their general psyche needs to be, listen, I want to achieve great things. I've been given the talent by God. I want to achieve great things. Hetmeyer, for example, everybody talks about his talent, but it's not good enough. There must be a synchronization between talent and hard work. You look at Puran, for example, and talk about a near-death situation. He has gotten really fit. He's improved on his fielding. He's going through a bad patch now because I think that he's a little tired because he's been traveling a lot all over the place, playing franchise cricket and representing the West Indies team. But he seems to be highly motivated. So it's a combination of things. And if we view the other cricketing nations like India and Australia, it's not only about the systems, but it's about the players having to compete for their places. And that's why I think that what happened in Bangladesh is going to change somewhat the dynamics of West Indies cricket, where competition for places are concerned.
And Philip talked about musical chairs. West Indies cricket West Indies and the selectors, the lead selector, for instance, and the director of cricket, they talk about creating an environment of competition. You are of my era. I just learned that I'm a couple of years older than you are. So I'm your senior, but we are of the same vintage, of the same era. And we talk about the competition that existed in the day of the great era of West Indies. But there's more than one, because we had the 60s.
60s, yeah.
Yeah, we had the 60s on the world and sobers. Then we had a little bit of a lull, and then we saw the Clive Lloyd era, which was the greatest of them all. But we talk of this competition and the competitiveness that existed among regional players. What is the difference between competition then and the competition of which the Cricket West Indies, the lead selector and the director of cricket talk now?
Well, I think that Roger Harper is a very measured lead selector. I like him a lot. I think that he's brought a lot of his wisdom and knowledge to his job now as the lead selector from the past. And I think that what he's trying to do is to try to get players to perform well. And the only way they can perform well is not to be complacent in their position. So he is urging them to, work hard. And as Philip said, it's not just working hard, but working smart. You got to work on specific things. But then you're talking about in the 70s and the 80s, guys had the general psyche of wanting to be the best in the world. So they were competing not against themselves alone, but against different territories, and the standards were high. So again, that general psyche of having to compete against great players or very good players brought about a lot of the inner values that we perhaps don't see in our players now. This is an egocentric world, and we have to understand the influences of society too. Years ago, we played two main sports, football and cricket, in the region, and everybody I knew wanted to play cricket for the West Indies team. So it was an intrinsic value that we don't see again. So the world has changed significantly. These players have grown up in a more egocentric world, but we were team-oriented. We were, great at being patriotic and wanted to represent the people of the region. It's something that we have to instill from an early age in our youngsters.
When you were a keeper, then you played, and
I stopped some balls.
you stopped some balls, yes.
And some
and,
stopped me.
and I'm sure you recognize that the opening bowlers sometimes, after the first 2 or 3 overs, they're just getting warmed up. They're just getting into their work. And I sense that Tony Gray is just getting into his work. But we're going to take a break, and we're going to let him continue that work and maybe out to full pace after this break on Anything Cricket.
Whatever the challenge that you face, you'll need effective insurance solutions. Look no further than IGS Insurance Brokers. We specialize in commercial, auto insurance, life, individual and group health, as well as pension packages.
Our aim at IGS is to offer the best possible service to our clients and at the same time to be a credit to the insurance industry in Barbados.
Call us at 242-7642. IGS Insurance Brokers. You can stay safe with us.
Welcome back. Well, Wayne, I'm going to throw the ball right back to Tony Gray. I'm not going to be one of these captains who is going to experiment at the start of a new session. I'm going to pick up where he left off. He was flowing. He was in good form. He looked very threatening. And the ball is back with you, Tony.
Well, Philip, before I can tell you and Tony, I would have faced Wayne Daniel, Malcolm Marshall, Sylvester Clark, and some fellas from around Barbados who were just as quick as them, whose names may not have made it onto the international level. So Tony Gray doesn't faze me. I'm not scared.
But no wonder though you ran to the commentary box afterwards, because that was a lot of pace you were facing.
But by the time we got to the commentary box, I was past that age when they say life begins.
So you made a smart decision. But Tony, realistically, we talked about the guys then and now they threw that at you, and clearly there's one obvious difference, and that's what's in it for them kind of thing. There's a lot of money floating around there. And no doubt, guys, as you may have alluded to earlier, could get complacent. But here's the thing. You've got what people call backroom staff. You've got coaches. You should have some help for the mind as well. I'm not so sure that in West Indies, we always maximize the value of that, but it should be there. So if the reality is that these guys have influences that didn't exist to the same extent before, what is going to be done about it? Are you just going to pay coaches to sit back and say, well, the guy's not motivated because he's getting too much money? Or do they adopt the effective means of addressing it? And that can't be simply to rotate contracts to players averaging 30.
Tony, may I say something before you tackle Philip's question, or you may add to Philip's question, right? And it is this. The coaches at the West Indies level, what should their real responsibility be? Is it their responsibility to develop cricketers from the grassroots and iron out all the issues that they would have had before they get to the international level? Or is it a completely different position when you are the international coach rather than what happens before they get to you? In other words, what role should the senior international coaches play in relation to the coaches at the regional level, where the franchises put these teams together and bring these players to the international stage?
Well, the head's coach, his main portfolio is to improve players at that level, to concentrate on improving the test players, the one-day international players, the T20 players, and have them maximizing their abilities so that they can perform, so that we can win games again and climb the ladders in the different formats. But the point is that he has to also insist in coaches at the regional level improving players, because we have to be proactive where development players are concerned. A lot of players at the test standard, the one-day international standards, even the T20 standards, they have fundamental issues. We talk about batsmen, for example, struggling against the short deliveries. That didn't come about because Philip Simmons didn't do a good job at this level. He has to now try to rectify that problem. So we have to look at improving our resources where coaching is concerned at the school level, the club level, and the regional level, so that when these players are elevated to international cricket standards, they can live up to expectation. I think that a lot of problems stem from the inability of our coaches to understand the psychological makeup of the different players too. How do I motivate a player? You have to look at his background, for example. So the coaching courses must be aligned with what you're trying to achieve. And coaches at a very early stage of these players' life must have a psychological background in how to motivate players, how to get them thinking about representing the country, and how to really and truly push them to be the best in the world, because we have players with the talent. We talk about shot making ability in Hetmeyer, but does he have it internally to want to be the best in the world? It's something that we had years ago. So we have to look at holistically educating our coaches and everybody around the players at a very early age, so that Philip Simmons and company do not have the type of problems that we're still seeing existing when these players are elevated to international status.
Tony, if I can draw on my background in education again, and from very early, even before you graduate any training in school for teachers, you learn that you must address the needs, the all-round needs of the student. If you're trying to teach a guy something, and this is not specific reference to the cricketers, so don't misunderstand me, but you're trying to teach somebody something, but they're hungry, or didn't get enough sleep the night before, I wish you luck. Okay, so we touched on the whole idea of these guys having wallets that they're not accustomed to. To what extent then do you address this, or has this been addressed by having courses in financial management? I'm talking about bringing in a guy to talk for an hour and that's the end of the story. I'm talking about real work in helping these guys, and don't wait until they become millionaires to do it. There's a pathway, and you recognize talent. We always talk about talent. Very few of our cricketers were guys who were recognized when they were 23 or 24 years old. Very few. Most of them have come through some sort of system from maybe around 15 years old, playing for the franchise or the country, so to speak, in the region. So therefore, the opportunity is there. Don't tell me that it must be done in school, because everybody wants everything to be done in school. But school only goes from 9 to 3, and nowadays in this environment, not even that sometimes. So therefore, cricket associations around the region have to take a little bit more responsibility. So again, I'm not giving all the blame to the players. You can only live what you know. And therefore, if you're accustomed having $10 to spend, and all of a sudden you've got 10,000, come on, you need some help.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree that the CWI in the past have, had some common trends in the Caribbean to try to educate players, but it's up to the regional boards to do it. I mean, I've been a part of 300 Biggest Cricket for a long time now, a former under-19 coach, and I know that a lot of monies have been spent on educating the youngsters. I've worked with Pollard, Darren Bravo, Dwayne Bravo, Dinesh Ramdin, Ravi Rampal, and we've had a lot of pre-tournament courses on different intricacies of how you manage your money, how you manage females, for example, and the distractions that you will have, how you represent the people of the region, in the right way, how you present yourself as ambassadors to West Indies cricket when you are elevated in that position. So I think that in Trinidad and Tobago, we have seen a lot of effort in trying to get the players ready for international competition, because these players are the billboards that we have to project the Caribbean people. Just the other day, I was in a program talking about CPL, for example, and what CPL can and have been doing for the people of the region. 90% of our countries depend on tourism. From the 70s, the 80s, we have not done a feasibility study on how much monies came in because of the brilliance of Sir Vivian Richards, of the brilliance of people like Joel Garner, and the personalities and the way they carried about themselves. So we have to build players not only to perform well, but to project the countries that they came from and to project the region in the right way. And we have to follow suit. And when I say follow suit, there's so many, so many sporting entities, sporting countries, sporting clubs, the NBA, for example, that we can learn from on how they progress their players along. So there's a lot of education out there, and we definitely need to really and truly look at proactively, holistically developing our players before they reach to those heights.
And Tony, I've heard it said so often, and by people who are high up the ladder in terms of cricket knowledge, that a high percentage, and they say high percentage because I've heard 80%, 75%, never heard 20%, always a high number of your success is based on what happens upstairs. In other words, your thinking, your thought processing as a cricketer will heavily influence how you perform. And if that is so, then I have to ask how much of the preparation really is based on that, because we constantly hear guys are not physically fit, but we don't get the inside track and the entire information as to the other type of preparation that is so critical. Is it that it doesn't take place, or is just that it's a well-guarded secret?
All right, let's make comparisons. When you play county cricket, and I played 4 years for Surrey Cricket Club, you have 19 games a year. I shared the season with Sylvester Clark, so it was a learning process for me initially. But if you're playing 19 games a year and you're the professional, even if you're playing league cricket in England, you're learning a lot of different things. How to be a professional, how to adjust to different situations, scenarios of the game, how to just adjust to different pitches and different conditions, because you know that England changes a lot. So we had an advantage on the players now. They don't have that scenario to work with. So we have to be compensatory. A lot of discussions with players have to be a reality. When I dealt with the West Indies B team, there was a lot of discussions with the fast bowlers, a lot of discussions with the batsmen, and not only game sense scenario discussions, but motivational discussions. The way they think is vastly different. So players of that era who coach now and manage teams now have to adjust to the way players think now. But you're right in saying that it's a mind game, because at international cricket levels, guys are normally fit enough to go through 5 days, but it's what they do and how they think out things, game sense scenarios, when the game evolves, that makes them productive. Lara was excellent at that, a synchronization between skill and obviously the thought processes throughout the day. That's why he could have made 400 runs and 501. So we have to get the intelligence level up. And the only way you could get that is to have a lot of discussions, a lot of videos. Let's use the technology and let's ask questions. But coaches need to know how to bring out the best in players where the thought processes is concerned, and not to talk too much, but allow them to think for themselves and think on their feet.
Tony, again, we return back in eras. the player of your era, my era, somehow or another seem to have all these mental skills, game awareness, and the knowledge of the game, what they wanted to do, what was necessary to be done. And I know for a fact from my experience and my observation that a lot of that came about by playing cricket and playing cricket and playing more cricket and learning by playing cricket. What you are suggesting to me is that that situation no longer exists. That condition, those conditions no longer exist. And now we have to manufacture players. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that we have to be compensatory. Now, let me give you, because there's a lot of ignorance attached to why we dominated the world for 19 years, because we don't do the research. We talk about, I just mentioned county cricket, but county cricket was a perfect finishing school for our players because we got contracts because we were good before. But we don't look at the under 12 level. You are at my era, and what we did at the under 12 level is not just play more cricket, but we played critical thinking games that allow us to think at that level. All these critical thinking games are a thing of the past. What we did when we got up to under 15, for example, is that we played competitive cricket, but we also played other sports. So the science now that is called cross training, we used to unconsciously do. I keep on saying to the West Indian people that we were the best prepared team, not just in cricket, but in the world. You cannot get that level of preparation again where you play in all these critical thinking games at the under 12 level. Then we go up to playing the different sports that you will get different athleticism, you will get a different strengthening of the muscles, you will get different modes of thinking, different thought processes, and then you go on play county cricket, which was a perfect finish in school. So the athleticism and the intelligence level was unconsciously built because we played all these critical thinking games. That is no more there. We are dependent slowly on technology. And that dependency has weakened the human being itself. We talk about using technology at the highest level of the game to analyze the opposition. If you don't have the human beings being holistically developed, then technology doesn't matter. So what you're witnessing now, for example, is players not as athletic as we used to be because lifestyle changes have occurred. And I'm telling you, we have to be pertinent to our situation in the Caribbean. Bring back a lot of the games that we used to play at the under 12 level, institute it in our practice sessions as cricketers, and you'll see a huge difference.
Okay, well, you met Ayala last time you were on the show. She's not here with us today, but she's going to be proud of us because we're going to be talking a bit about the women cricketers when we come back after this break on Anything Cricket. Let's go.
Whatever the challenge that you face, you'll need effective insurance solutions. Look no further than IGS Insurance Brokers. We specialize in commercial, auto insurance, life, individual and group health, as well as pension packages.
Our aim at IGS is to offer the best possible service to our clients and at the same time to be a credit to the insurance industry in Barbados.
Call us at 242-7642. IGS Insurance Brokers. You can stay safe with us.
Welcome back. So, Tony, you definitely looking quite deep into this thing, and here's hoping that it's not just you, that all those who are in a position to make these decisions really sit down and analyze what the problem is. I know we know all the gives it a lot of thought.
Well, yes, and I also wanted to basically, well, I can ask Tony the question, would I be wrong? Would I be out of place? You talked about the versatility that the youngster of our era might have had in participating in different sports, developing different muscles, developing different skills. What I'm saying is that with today's technology, could we replicate all of this in one place, let's say, and hence how really urgent and important is the need for a full-time cricket academy if we are going to continue to operate at a professional level and compete with the international world?
I think it's necessary. I think that if you look at India, for example, they have a cricket academy, Australia, the same. I went to Loughborough University not too long ago, and all their international teams go there to prepare for international competition. So there's a definite system. We definitely need an academy, but the contents of the academy is very important, because we can have a shell academy, meaning just the shell without the real contents that would not be impactful. I mean, let's look at the HPC in the past. I think it was a very good thing. Shannon Gabriel, for example, went there, and when I coached him at the under 17 level, he didn't have a run-up, but he had pace, so I carried him to Guyana with me with the national under 19 team, and hopefully knowing that once he got this run-up going, he could be really fast, and that's exactly what happened at the HBC. So the academies are necessary, but we have to get the monies first. And without money, there is no real quality academy that we can have. So there must be strategic plans to get monies into the coffers of West Indies cricket. And we have to go all around the Caribbean and let the different governments be a part of the resurgence of West Indies cricket where monies are concerned. But we also have to seize the initiative to be creative and really and truly get monies into the coffers, because the academies cost a lot. We have to look at nutrition of players, for example. We have to have the right coaches employed to impact the players in the right way. They have to be training properly, so physiotherapists and trainers, the right people have to be employed. So you're looking at something that is necessary, something that could only make us highly competitive in the world of cricket. And it's imperative that we bring forth the academies, but the contents must be potent enough.
You know, we talk about the academies, and I think you're bang on. And again, the background that I already described, you know, I'm not going to argue against that. But while we're waiting for it or working towards it, something has got to be done. And I say again that this one-year musical chairs event is not going to go very far. I don't know too many people who work on one-year contracts in any meaningful enterprise other than a project. You know, you've got a project, you're building a house or a hotel or something, or a project that's going to finish in a few months or whatever. And you may contract someone, a consultant or somebody, or a group of people. For example, recently you can actually say where we had the ash fall here in Barbados, there were a number of workers who were, you could virtually say, contracted over a 2-week period to deal with that. And that's a specific thing. But if you've got an ongoing enterprise, I don't know of anybody who uses a one-year contract. Even in professional sport, I tend to follow the NBA. I don't hear too much about one-year contracts. I think we need to stop using the contract as waving it as some sort of carrot or something, and give these guys meaningful contracts for 2 or 3 years, so that if, of course, you've got to review it. You've got to live up to certain things. There are targets along the way. I'm not saying you give a guy a contract for 3 years, and if he doesn't turn up for work until year 3, that's okay. That would be naive to even think I mean that. But the fact of the matter is, you've got to have a longer period, give the guys responsibility and targets, so that when that guy messes up at the end of that 3-year period, you don't have to look back at him. You know, you can move forward. But they continue recycling. We're not getting anywhere with it. And you know, it's interesting that the women, you know, who they receive their contracts as well, debut contracts, and they actually have more contracts now, more contracted players than last year. And part of the explanation given was that, well, they didn't really take anybody off the contract because there wasn't a whole lot of activity, one, and these are serious times. But it seems as though COVID has only affected the females in cricket and the female administrators, but it didn't affect Ross and Chase and those guys who in the middle of a pandemic, at the start of a pandemic, where the world is stunned, startled, nobody knows what's really going on. And those guys got up, and I can tell you, a lot of people now who are criticizing them and saying they deserve to lose their contract were saying that they shouldn't even go. And they went off to England, and my understanding is, I could be wrong, but at less money, okay? And they went up there, and they were the first to play cricket after the shock of the pandemic. And if I'm not mistaken, they tell me that it was the most watched test series or something of that nature. You know, and all of a sudden that doesn't count. You got some serious problems.
Tony,
in terms of the way we think.
Tony, to your knowledge, is the whole operation of the retainer contract concept by the 1 year contract something unique to the West Indies, or is it? How does it pan out in the rest of the professional cricket world, as far as the other international countries are concerned? To your knowledge?
Well, I think it's generally a 1 year contract. I think that's the way with Australia, but again, their contracts are supplemented by the right cricketing systems, academies, and things like that. They have most of the systems in place to ensure that players are elevated where performance is concerned. You see, I am saying that it's a good point that we perhaps need to review the 1 year contract, because it's not good enough, because it has to be pertinent to what is happening in your cricket. Our cricket is not at a high standard, so you cannot expect players to just make the transition. Over time, they will be able to make the transition. If you look at some players, for example, you look at Kyle Myers. He's been playing a long time in regional cricket, but you've seen the development now. Bonner, the same thing. They've been able to make the quick transition, and hopefully it will continue. So everything must be done strategically and pertinently to your situation. And Australia has that high standard, and they expect players to make the quick transition because they play in a high standard, locally. We do not have the high standards, so we have to perhaps look at 2 year contracts, and there must be deliverables by our players. And you're right, there must be checks along the way to make sure they're reaching those set goals and deliverables.
So as we are regarded as just merely third world countries who do not have the resources to match those of the international, the bigger countries, even in an economic sense, should we resign ourselves to always being second class and third world as far as cricket is concerned, now that we have not been able to reach to those same standards?
No, I don't think so. I think that, if you look back at the 70s, the 60s, we produced some of the best cricketers that ever lived with all the financial resources. I think it's amazing now that we have the retainer contracts, or we have players making monies, but the quality that we witnessed in the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s are no more here on a consistent basis. There are glimpses of the quality that can be, but it's not on a consistent basis. And it is not really always about money. It is about what is happening internally. The money will come. So we have to be creative. And one of the problems we have in our sometimes myopic thinking is that we do not go back to success. We analyze failure a lot. We do not go back to the point in time where we have Sir Andy Roberts being one of the greatest fast bowlers in the world. Why did that happen? What was his background? What Sir Vivian Richards did when he was a child, so that we could re-implement a lot of the cricketing systems that are pertinent to our development. But what we have done is that we have really looked for other people to tell us how to be. And that to me is it is fatuous. It is not, right, because we have a rich history of success, a history of success that anywhere else in the world, any sporting discipline or any sporting club cannot compare with. 90 years of dominance.
The thing about it too, Tony, is that you've had this rich history of success, as you said, and we're looking elsewhere for solutions. But the thing about it is that many of the entities that are now successful became successful by doing the things that we were doing.
Ah, that's right.
You know,
That's
and,
right.
and we have tossed those things aside. And you know, people have actually used our strengths against us. But let me go back to school again and you know, be patient with me. As I told you, that's my other life as well. And there's always this debate about, if it's a debate at all, to what extent do you teach the syllabus as opposed to teaching the student? In other words, you've got a set of work to cover, and you go in there as a teacher. Do you decide I'm gonna finish the syllabus, come walk there, and who catches on, who get left behind, too bad for them? Or do you make sure that you give a fair chance to everybody to master the various components of that system? In other words, your efforts then must be tailored to suit the situation. And I say that in support of what you said earlier, Tony, because I think you would know another part of our success in cricket has been the fact that you get support. As far back as Gary Sober scoring a century and David Holford, who a much lesser batsman, doing his part at the other end. And I'm sure once or twice at least, you must have played a supporting role to somebody at some stage as well. I know Rain Holder scored some important runs. So the whole idea of support is important in cricket. And yes, to be serious now, I thought he needed to
So you're
make
not
that
serious
point.
when you say Rain Holder scorers?
And you said,
That should be a
let's be
serious
serious
thing.
now.
Sorry for interrupting, but I had to step in there.
You said,
Yeah,
let's be
yeah,
serious now.
Let me rephrase. So to complete my point, I just wanted to make make the point that what you're saying is very true. You know, that you have to adapt to suit the situation you're in, just as the teacher makes adjustments to suit the students and doesn't go about trying to just complete the syllabus when it's clear that the students are not able to move at that pace. We've got to do what we need to do. And yes, you know, everybody else may have 1-year contracts, but everybody else also has academies and all the other infrastructure that is required. We don't have it, so therefore we need to give players a longer time to sort themselves out.
Yeah, definitely so. You know, I could go back in time to Lyndon Joseph, the Guyanese fast bowler. I roomed with him on a tour to Zimbabwe. West Indies B team tour to Zimbabwe, either B team or A team tour to Zimbabwe. And I roomed with him, and I'll tell you something, he's the best talent that I've seen that didn't play for the West Indies team, but he had that all-round ability. But there were some issues. He came from a less than ideal situation. And what you're talking about there, Philip, is really important, that we have coaches, we have managers that understand that they don't have to be idealistic with just a system. They can be flexible. Flexibility is a part of coaching now at the highest level, because you have different personalities, you have different people coming from different backgrounds. And you know, it's much more pertinent to the West Indies system, because too long we have sort of done things the way other countries have done things. But this is a different situation in that we have to be flexible. With Guyanese people, they have a different culture. With Barbadian people, they have a different culture. And you have to look at history too. It's a wonderful thing to look at history and understand the different psyche. If you look at the dominant team, it was amazing that a team that came together projected and reflected the different cultures that synchronized to bring about that level of performance. So again, a lot of research has to happen in West Indies cricket. And I'm afraid that there's ignorance and conjecture of our great past, and we have not used it in this present day.
Well, Tony, I'll tell you what. None of the things that we have discussed here, whether good ideas, bad ideas, or in between, can be implemented between now and next month. And they tell us the South Africans are coming. So after another short break, we are going to just take a quick look. We're not going to hold you much longer. We're going to take a quick look forward towards the South African series. But more so, you know, sometimes to go forward, if you want to know where you're going, sometimes you got to work out where you're coming from. So we're actually going to go back a bit to go forward. When we come back on Anything Cricket, let's talk. Welcome back. But Tony, before we look forward to the next series ahead of us in a couple of weeks, I made a reference to the women earlier and the fact that there are actually more contracts given to the women. In other words, those were increased, while the men, they decrease. The women's cricket too is at a very an interesting stage, because we would have done well as the men did in 2016, but since then it has been pretty much downhill. Courtney Walsh now has been appointed as the coach, and we are in the course of a second camp within just a relatively short time.
Yeah, I think that when you look at West Indies women's team in the recent past, and I call it the recent past, that's 2016, we beat Australia by 8 wickets, which was a monumental performance. All the women performed well. I mean, beating Australia for the first time, but by 8 wickets in a final, in a World Cup final, tells us that our women have the ability to go forward and perform well. But we've been downhill. It seems to me that if you look at our World Cup winning results, we seem to go downhill after, and we don't really capitalize and continue the good ways. I am very disappointed with women's cricket in recent times and their performances, because I think that we have a lot of the physical gifts to do well at the international level, but obviously we have to develop skill and we have to have a system that helps with that. I think that CWI has done the right thing by saying, listen, we're going to give you 3 more contracts in addition to the contracts that we had last time around, so that we are motivated to see you do well. And I know that, there's a lot of institutional memory there with the ambassador, Courtney Walsh, and Anne Brown, who has been tremendous over the years as an administrator. She's also played and represented the West Indies and also Trinidad and Tobago. So there's a lot of institutional memory, and hopefully that can pan out. But I agree with the additional contracts for the women, but you have to look at what is happening, not just where cricket is concerned worldwide, but women's sport in general. And perhaps there must be some digression to, for example, tennis. The best women in the world are the strongest women in the world, the most powerful women in the world. So fitness is a key component to our success. And again, there must be a creative way of dealing with women because they are different.
You know, it's interesting you talk about fitness, because just recently I was part of a conversation in which I learned that, or I was informed, I would say, that the camp which just started a few days ago, the women having gone through the series of initial tests didn't do very well on that test at all. And in fact, I managed to get some insight into the actual process. And, I think there's some issues there in terms of how these things are administered and so on. So clearly that there needs to be some learning, to my mind, not only at the level of the players, but in some cases too at the level of those who supervise.
Yeah, and again, you have to look at the different boards. There must be commonality of fitness improvement. I mean, the difference with Australia, England, and perhaps New Zealand is their robust girls, very athletic girls and women, and they're very, very fit. And that's the huge difference. I think it plays a much more integral part in the success of women's sport when you look at the fitness level and the physical strength of women. Serena Williams, for example, is perhaps the best female sportswoman of all times. And she has the difference of power and physical strength. And so we have to acquire those things, but genetically we are gifted. I think that there's skill to work with, skill to improve. But as I said before, we have wonderful people who have years and years of experience, international and otherwise, working with these young women, and hopefully we can see the progress very quickly.
Yeah, and the thing, one of the disturbing things too about that whole fitness issue is that not too long ago there was a camp which many of these female cricketers attended. So the fact that there were some issues in terms of fitness at the start of the new camp was certainly mind-boggling. But I can tell you that you may have played at the highest level. I can't take that from United and Wayne, but I think Wayne probably has been involved in, even if indirectly, with women's cricket even before either of us. So he will have his views as well, Wayne.
Well, be that as it may, but are you gentlemen aware? Yes, well, yeah, I know we all three of us know about the dominance of the three that Tony mentioned earlier. He talked about England, he talked about Australia, he talked about New Zealand. Since the West Indies won that great day in 2016 for West Indies cricket, when the West Indies women topped the world, the effort, the resources that the Indians, the South Africans, the Pakistanis, the Sri Lankans, and those, are you aware that all of these countries have gone past West Indies since then? Because they took this thing, they are taking women's cricket seriously. I somehow get the feeling that we have not yet gotten to the point of taking women's cricket seriously. We got lucky in 2016 because we had a group of women, well coached, well trained, who happened to peak at the right time. After that, what? After that, what? What resources did we have to return to when the skills of those particular players started to wane? And I talk about WANE. When those skills started to wane, what was the succession plan for that? What sustainability is there? You see, I know what we're doing again. We put together another group of women. I hope that, like Sherwin Campbell was able to do with the first group, that Courtney Walsh is able to work that miracle again, and we get lucky again. You only win Lotto once.
Well, unless you're Tony Gray.
So what I'm saying is that we are hoping against. We're hoping. What we need is a really structured, organized program for women's cricket in the West Indies, and it has to start at the territorial levels. Tony, I accept that from all the reports that I've got and what I've been following over the years, Trinidad has always had a very vibrant women's cricket program. I watched women from Trinidad play cricket in Barbados in the 70s, you know, and coming up to Barbados and playing against the Barbadian ladies. Again, nothing organized. It was at that time, the Women's Cricket Association was a separate entity to the Barbados Cricket Association, who had nothing to do with the women whatsoever. But you had a group of women who got together, but a group of people who got together in the interests of women's cricket. The time has come that we really have to really take women's cricket seriously, and we cannot expect to advance and progress without a structured grassroots cricket program where we have females playing cricket in Barbados in the West Indies on a regular basis and at a higher level.
And that's something, Wayne, that anything cricket, Let's Talk, would want to even investigate a bit more, because we are hoping to put together a show in the coming weeks that will focus on women's cricket, looking at it as it is, and looking to see what needs to be done and what can be done. But even before that, well, I shouldn't say before that, maybe along with that, we've got the South African men now coming, Tony Gray, and I'm sure that after defeating Bangladesh, drawing with Sri Lanka, some may describe them as lightweights, but a cricket match is a cricket match. You definitely can't describe South Africa as lightweights. So, as I said before, sometimes you've got to look back to look forward. Given what we saw as recently as against Sri Lanka, and bearing what we saw in that series in mind, where are we and what do we need to do now to prepare for the South Africa?
Well, it's always about specificity when you're preparing for a certain opposition. And South Africa obviously will have its potency in pace. You have perhaps 6 fast bowlers are going to come to these shows on the South African squad. You have a batting lineup that has talent, but because of the exodus from the game of people like, well, A.B. de Villiers in the past and Pat Duplessis, you know, I think that there is some weakness there in the batting department. But the potency of the fast bowlers we have to prepare for. We have to look at pitch conditions, for example. Are we going to play, on pitches like we did against Sri Lanka in Antigua, where there were flat pitches, and don't give the South African fast bowlers any help at all? What do we need to do with our batsmen to improve their proficiency against pace? But there'll be one or two spin bowlers, but mainly pace. What about their technique? Are we seeing the improvement in the technical aspect of our batsmen against pace, the back foot movement, the ability to play short deliveries? Because these guys can bowl at 90 miles an hour, and you're getting perhaps 3 or 4 fast bowlers coming at you that can keep that pressure going. So it is important that we improve our foot speed as batsmen, our heart and determination. And, you have to prepare specifically for the opposition, which is highly dependent on pace.
Well, like Tony alluded, the South Africans, their main strength is in the area of fast bowling. They're going to come with a battery of fast bowlers. There's this guy I'm very keen to see, the new kid on the block, a guy called Norgia, who they tell me is the fastest bowler in South Africa at the moment. I mean, we all know about the quality of a guy. We saw beat Rabada. We don't have to discuss that twice. But I think that the South Africans may be a bit vulnerable again, Tony mentioned it first, they're somewhat in transition, having lost a couple of key players, and also the quality of the batting lineup still is questionable. The leadership is another issue. I mean, we just had a switch from Du Plessis on to Quinton de Kock. He gave it up, and now Bavuma has taken over the captaincy. He is still very much a work in progress and an unknown quality as far as leadership and captaincy at the international level is concerned. We know the problems that this South African board and the administration has been going through. So there's been a lot of turbulence in South African cricket, and that, for me, makes them vulnerable and gives the West Indies that extra chance. It is going to be key where the matches are played, the conditions that we will provide for that series. And again, I mean, I'm only repeating what Tony said. Do we feed the South African strength and produce fast, bouncy wickets? Or do we counter that by going the other way and looking to take away their potency and operate on what has been one of our strengths, our spinners?
Well, I can tell you, we'll probably find out. Tony, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that against Sri Lanka, we should have won at least one test match. The last test match, because of the fact that we saw what was happening in the first test match on a placid pitch at Sir Vivian Richards Stadium. I thought that, Roston Chase should have played that last test match. If not him, Warwickon should have played. Because it was a slight advantage for Warwickon with his left arm spin and the indentation made by the faster bowlers. That's the only advantage that a bowler had on that sort of surface. But Roston Chase was vice captain recently, and then captain the President's 11 against Sri Lanka, and did very well with the ball, got 4 wickets and batted well. So I thought that he would have filled a lot of the different positions that we needed to fill in that last test match. So if the South Africans are custom playing on bouncy fast tracks against potent fast bowlers like Rabada, Harris and company, then we have to put them on slow tracks and get our spinners involved. I think that our spinners, our consistent spinners that perhaps not turning the ball by a long way, prodigious turn, but can be consistent and be patient against the South African batsmen who like the ball coming onto the bat. I think that that can be key against them.
Now you mentioned Roston Chase. I got a confession to make. Because recently I read an article by a colleague of mine, a senior journalist, who made the point, and maybe Wayne can help me with the period of time he was talking about. I think he said last year or the previous contract period, that Roston Chase, the only bowler who got more wickets than Roston Chase during that period of time was Shannon Gabriel. And if we are so full of talent in the region that we can decide that an all-rounder who has done well with the ball, but his batting is falling off, and we can, tell him to take a couple, we can discard him virtually. Our cricket must really be in a very healthy position. And I say discard because realistically, if I go to work tomorrow, God forbid, and I have no contract, and they're telling me, well, we'll call you to come in when we want you to come in, and we will pay you according to when you come. I really truly don't have job security. I have, the message is clear that you're not taking me seriously, that I'm not an important part of your whole thing. And I don't know why most of us would get up and go to work every day and would not want to feel that way or have that message sent to us. But we feel it's okay because you're a cricketer, you do well, go and sort yourself out. We all in our lives go through stuff where we are probably not as effective as we were the day before. How many of us would want to be treated that way?
For the sake of balance, though, let's make it clear that Roston Chase has not been eliminated from contention for West Indies play, one, and two, he has not been thrown to the West. Roston Chase still has a contract with the Cricket West Indies.
You know what, man? I'm going to speak to your boss, man, and I'm going to see if I can negotiate a reduction of salary for you and see if you take it that way.
We're just talking about being balanced and being fair and being correct.
Yeah. No, he had a contract, but I don't think I would be that much. I don't think I'd be too pleased, and I know Tony would not be to go to work tomorrow to find out that you are now on a reduced contract.
So, how would Kyle Mears feel if maybe he loses his contract to Roston Chase tomorrow?
Well, I would hope that doesn't happen for the simple reason that Kyle Mears, we're told, is on a developmental contract. So there should not be competition between two at this point.
But we already know there are only limited contracts. Not everybody.
But there are four fewer. But we've visited that before, But basically, I particularly didn't want to get into the back and forth who should have received the contract, and that has not been the tone. That has not been the tone. That has not been the tone. Then that has not been the tone of our discussion so far. But I was simply reacting. I was simply reacting to Tony's point about Roston Chase.
Roston Chase has not been disadvantaged. Roston Chase is still eligible to play in the West Indies team if a team picked tonight. He's very much at the forefront, and he has every reason to believe that he is favorably considered. As
I said, man, I only hope that if that ever happens to you, you take it solo. That's as much as I can say. Well, I know I wouldn't.
In the competitive world of the harsh competitive world of professional sport, I would have to take it.
When I think that you were absent from the discussion Tony and I had over the last hour, because we established, or so I thought, that at the level we are at right now in West Indies cricket, that competition is only going to help us destroy ourselves and not prepare us to take on the world.
That's an opinion, though. No, that is not.
Well, it's an opinion. It's an opinion. It's an opinion based on observing that method for the last 20 years.
But it is an opinion nonetheless.
So if I do something for 20 years, if I do something for 20 years,
what the future holds.
If I do something for 20 years and it doesn't work, I am prepared to try anything else. But if you want to keep doing the same thing for 20 years, there's a name for that. But we won't go there right now. Tony, you're going to have the last word.
Yeah, I think that we could do well against South Africa. As I said before, I think that we should have won at least one test match against Sri Lanka. That second test match, I think that spinners will do well against South Africa. But we have to be strategic in the camps. We have to not make the same mistakes that we made against Sri Lanka. Everybody has to be at a certain fitness level. We must strategically play them in practice games that will simulate what they're going to get, and they're going to get pace. And not to say that we concentrate on pace alone, because South Africa will bring some spin, because they will do the research on the types of pitches that we normally play on here in the Caribbean. But I think that we have a team that is growing. I want to compliment everybody because we've done well against Bangladesh. We held our own against Sri Lanka. And I think that we are progressing. The batsmen are making runs and reaching milestones. I think that we just have to get our bowlers to be a little bit more penetrative, a little bit more consistent, and a little bit more about pressurizing the opposition. And subsequently, we'll get the results. But it has to be strategic preparation of the team. And let's not make the same mistakes. Let me just say something, that if there are practice matches, we can play our batsmen who would play most likely in the test matches, because Blackwood, I think, was disadvantaged the last time, didn't get an opportunity to play the President's 11 game, and was found wanting against Sri Lanka. So all these things must be strategically done, and I think that we can have a fantastic 2 tests and the 5 one-day or T20s against South Africa.
Well, it's interesting because in terms of that preparation, the man who was prepared was the same chess who made 80 odd in that game you're talking about and picked up some valuable wickets. So he was prepared. Blackwood, who obviously would have been in the team, he's the vice captain after all, and he hasn't done badly in recent times, but didn't get that opportunity. So there are issues that need to be sorted out. And as I said, after 20 years of failure, you got to do something different. But Tony Gray, thanks very much for joining us on anything Cricket Let's Talk. We look forward to hearing and seeing more of you in the future.
You're welcome. Take care, guys.